it going on? Counselors, we're going live on YouTube. Yep.
Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Yes.
I can.
I heard the dog too.
Wasn't mine. Neighbors. Dang neighbors. Okay, it's 6 o'clock. We'll go ahead and call to order this work session. Our initial discussion item is item number 2 is discussion and possible action relating to the COVID-19 pandemic. Essentially, not a lot has changed since we discussed this last week. We had an update from Dr. Dart today. His update essentially concluded what we all know already, that the peak is slated to hit sometime next week, and that the plateau is going to be probably in the next couple of weeks after that. We've heard a lot of discussion around the country about how long is this going to last, and at what point do we need to start considering kind of getting somewhat back to normal in a measured fashion. Of course, listen to the experts and taking their advice, which we've done from the beginning. And so we're starting to hear rumblings about that at this stage. We still are following very closely the Tulsa Health Department's recommendation. And Dr. Dart was very clear that this next coming week is one of the most important weeks for us to continue doing what we're doing. And we'll have to likely continue it for a couple weeks after that at least, and then reevaluate. So we're still listening to his excellent counsel. And so we're here today just to talk more about this, and I'll open it up to the floor to see if anybody has any comments at this stage.
I'll just say it sounds like we should stay the course. Did you copy? Okay.
Yes, I copied.
Good.
Anyone else have any input on that?
Well, we voted to extend it to the 30th, and I think that's still a good idea, but it's not too early for, at least in the back of our minds, to start considering how we'll step back into some kind of normal game plan for at least businesses and people in general.
Sorry for hearing background speakers here.
Okay. Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Lyndall. I think we're at that stage where Owassans have done an excellent job of listening to the health department's recommendations, passed through us, of course, and that's what we've been doing, is listen to them and passing that through. It's been an extremely difficult time for everybody, us as well, and we're all going through this together, and I think we continue following that counsel and meet again as we need to from there. We don't have another meeting scheduled after this one until the first week of May. So if we take no action today, which it sounds like we're not going to, then it'll be a matter of...
Go ahead. Next Tuesday?
Yeah, it's got to be next Tuesday. No, I'm talking about after that meeting. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Yeah. After that meeting, we're going to have a break in between there where we're not going to have a meeting. So if something comes up, we're going to have to call a meeting at that stage. But looks to me like we've got a plan in place, and we're following that plan, and it's been what it's designed to do. I talked to our hospital administrators today, and they're not seeing a lot. And I know for some people they're going to hear that, and they're going to say, well, that means we didn't need to do this in the first place. I think many of us would argue that the measures we're taking are the reason that we're not seeing a lot, and it's possible they're still going to see a wave come through here. But at this stage, it seems like the measures are working. That's being corroborated by our hospital administrators and Dr. Dart as well. So I think we stay the course.
I agree. It seemed like it did some good, kind of mandating and pushing the importance of distancing. So I'm happy to hear the positive and see the positive.
Yeah, I know we're all hearing from business owners as well. Many of us on this council are business owners, and everybody is very anxious to get back to work and get back to normal. I think we all know that's not going to happen anytime soon anyway, but people should know that we are working our very hardest to get it back to normal. We want it just as much as everybody else in Owasso does. So I think we'll leave it at that and move on to the next item unless anybody else has any other comments.
Good.
Okay. Item number 3 is discussion relating to the firearms range observation tower. And Chief Chambliss has this item.
Good evening, counselors. I appreciate you having me here this evening. Hang on just a moment, please. I was holding the push button down, not realizing that I could let go, so a little bit of humor thrown into this tonight, new technology. I'd like to start by apologizing. We had a little bit of a technology glitch trying to show the pictures of the observation tower while we have everybody on screen here, so you do not have that available to you, but it will be emailed to you tomorrow morning so you can have a visual of what we were talking about. Just a little bit of background information. The Owasso Firearms Range was closed in 2004, and following that closure, our department borrowed ranges from other police departments, and then for several years we had a costly lease with a private range, leading all the way up to a decision in 2011 to start constructing a new range at the Oak Range facility. That construction has resulted in dirt work being completed many years ago for the pistol range, the rifle range, the 360-degree range. We also completed concrete walkways, concrete for a shoot house, and when you hear me refer to a shoot house, it's basically a small building that officers go inside and practice building movements and gives them the ability to actually shoot firearms from within inside a building to kind of simulate what they might encounter in their field work. We also completed concrete for our target system. That in the future will be a turning target system. You'll hear me referring to that. And we also have completed construction of 3 metal awnings. We have some steps remaining to kind of go back to the original plan that we discussed with the council in 2012. And those remaining steps are the observation tower, the turning target system, an outdoor lighting system, and a shoot house. The outdoor lighting system is going to be a system that allows for some dimming of the outdoor lighting to simulate some different low light scenarios, different lighting scenarios when officers are practicing at night. Tonight's discussion takes us to one of those steps, which is the observation tower. At any given time, we can have 10 to 20 officers shooting at the range at the exact same time. While that's taking place, you will have training officers, safety officers on the ground with those officers that are shooting behind them, watching them to make sure that they're exhibiting safe firearms practices. But what we know in police training, military training alike, that the best way to observe officers shooting, especially when that many are shooting, excuse me, is to be at an elevated position where you can actually see the officers and through radio contact communicate with range safety officers to make sure that nothing is taking place on the range that could jeopardize somebody's life. So an observation tower is needed. And we're getting ready. We've already put that item out to bid. Part of that development of the architect is to have developed architectural and engineering design through a local architect. We've also hired a project consultant to help with the project, and we've consulted extensively with our Public Works Department. The Public Works has been vital in almost every phase of the project that we have worked with, and they've continued to be so. We are building in floodplains, so we obviously need their expertise as what is required. As I've mentioned, the project has been put out to bid. An optional pre-bid meeting is being held tomorrow for those interested in attending. The bid opening is scheduled for April 23rd. And if we have an acceptable bid, our plan is to bring it to the City Council on May 5th. I apologize to everyone, I'm at the table. But funding is available in the police department budget as a result of some cost-saving measures that we implemented last year to carry money over into this year's budget. And we also have a $25,000 donation that the council's already approved to put toward this project. So I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have about what we were working on.
Thanks, Chief. Any questions or comments from the council?
Chief, can you kind of give me just an idea of what this is going to look like, the observation tower kind of specifications as best you can?
I can. The footprint is an 18 by 18 building, 2-story, with a fairly high ceiling height on the lower level and upper level. I believe both of them are about 10 feet. We have to get the upper floor a certain height and a certain construction material because we do anticipate periodically there'll be flooding in that lower level of the building. All of the upper half of the building is going to contain all the electronics, the capability to run the turning target system, the capability to run the lighting system that will be at the range. And, you know, it's basically just a block building with a metal roof that has 2 stories. There'll be a metal deck around most of the outside of it to allow the instructors to be able to walk out. It's also how they're going to be able to access the upper floor. And there's a lot of windows, obviously, because as an observation tower, they need to be inside and need to be able to see out. And again, I apologize, we don't have a picture for you today.
Basically a standard tower.
Yes. It's fairly simple construction, all things considered.
This may be a no-brainer question, but is it bulletproof?
Well, it could be if you're hiding in the right place, but generally speaking, no. Obviously, the concrete block is going to provide some level of protection for handgun rounds, would take, but with the windows and everything, if a mishap occurred, you could possibly have a bullet that could make it inside the building. But I would think that the concrete block is going to prevent most of the type of accidents we might be concerned with.
And this is strictly going to be for police use or training, and public is not going to be allowed, I would think there, correct?
We have never gone on record that the public is never going to be allowed on our range. We've already had events where the public has been invited there. I don't want to speak to the future as far as policy decision goes related to the public being on the range. But when they are, and if they are, it's under very strict standards and close observation. But as far as opening it to the public, no, that is not in any of our future plans.
Right, yeah, let me qualify that. I meant just as far as, I know you've got special events where you allow the public to come in and kind of just to see what you guys do. But as far as them just being able to go down and without being with your protection or with your guidance, you're not going to be allowed to go down and use the range.
That is correct.
So this tower will be able to see the entire range, be able to see all parts, or is it just going to be in one certain area that you can envision?
It will be an observation tower for the pistol range, and there'll be some ability to see in other portions of the range, but it is not being built for the purpose of observation at the rifle range. The dynamics and the safety considerations on the rifle range are a little bit different than on the handgun range.
Well, it sounds like it's a step forward again, and I know that there's another aspect to this. When do you think you might be coming to us with the next stage?
Well, it will depend on what the bids come in on this stage. It is possible that we could have the funding available to move forward immediately after this bid comes in with the turning target system. I do not anticipate enough funding in the current budget to take care of the shoot house and the lighting system and some of the other smaller projects that need to be done, but it is possible that we'll be able to do the observation tower and the turning target system depending on the bid that comes in.
far as all the electronics, things like that, are we going to add those later as far as getting the wiring done, things of that nature, or is it going to be already, or is it going to be added later, like conduits and things of that nature?
Right, so the electronics needed to actually just make the building functional, lighting and things like that will obviously be built into the project. But the items needed for the turning target system, the lighting system, all of that conduit is being laid, and that will be part of those other projects to be able to bring in whatever we need to connect to the building to make those other parts of the project functional.
I see.
Chief, you mentioned the shoot house. Is the shoot house a covered structure, or is it open air to allow for observation while people are doing their training?
It is a covered structure. We do not have a design of it yet, but some of the design criteria that we're looking at is for some elevation within the building, inside the building, because you do want it covered. We train in all kinds of weather. Unfortunately, it's not always pleasant down there when we're training, so to avoid, getting rained on, sleet, snow, things like that, inside that building for safety issues and also for just the welfare of the officers, we want it covered. But it's possible the shoot house will be designed with some type of catwalk on the inside of it, but we don't know that yet.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
All right, we'll now move on to item number 4, discussion relating to finance department items. Linda Jones has this item.
Good evening. Oh, I guess I had to turn on a button. Good evening.
Good evening, Linda.
The first item we have is in regards to the annual operating budget. As I know council is well aware, we're required by statute to do an annual operating budget. Tonight we've included our budget calendar for the year, which shows when we plan to have it ready for the public and for the meetings with the council and the public hearing. So the first presentation of the budget would be at the May work session, which is May 15th. Then we would have a legal notice that we would plan to put in the Owasso Reporter on May 20th, which would state the date for the public hearing, which would be June 2nd. And then we would schedule the adoption for June 16th, which would be in compliance with state statutes to have it approved before the end of June. So I'd be happy to entertain any questions that you have at this time.
Linda, I know that there's still a lot to be determined yet before you'll give us what the plan for the budget is, but any indication, or has there been any changes made just over what we've had to deal with the last month or so with this COVID issue in the budget I'm talking about?
Certainly, internally, we've reduced our projections for revenues. As you might well expect, we don't yet have our first distribution from the state reflecting the closures of a number of businesses. So we're hesitant to say a lot about that publicly until we get that information from them. But we're absolutely making modifications to the budget in response to what's going on now.
Okay, thank you.
Linda, do you have the ability to specifically project revenues? For instance, say Kohl's doesn't open up, and say JCPenney's doesn't open up. Can you just eliminate their sector of the sales tax revenue and get some kind of idea from that?
We get data, it's confidential, we can't release it to the public, but internally we are provided with the data on how much is collected by vendor. We also have codes to categorize vendors into certain categories. And so we've already looked at data collected this year, and I look particularly at a 13-month span, month by month, because sales tax and use tax tends to be cyclical, as you might well imagine. People spend more at Christmas than they do in January, for instance. And so we can see trends that are driven by weather, they're driven by holidays, they're driven by school closures, they're driven by a lot of things. And we can see those trends and we follow those trends. And that's how we know throughout the year something's meeting budget or not meeting budget, because we're expecting certain trends and we're comparing to those. And so we have made preparations to estimate what's going on by taking that 13-month comparison data and categorizing it with the state codes so that we can get subtotals of things like restaurants and things like hotels and different industries. And we know some of those are more significantly impacted by what's going on than others. Groceries are doing well right now. You can go to the grocery store and see empty shelves because people are buying groceries. So we can see certain trends and make estimates based on those things. But then when we get our next month's distribution, we'll be better able to compare our expectations with the realities because we're having to make some assumptions. And so it's something that will require a lot of monitoring and a lot more estimating than a normal year because there are a lot of unknowns. But we're using the data that we have in the best way we can, and we'll be able to tweak it if need be, even in June. So let's say we present a budget in May based on estimates, and then we get actuals in June that are different. Because we have a partial impact with our May distribution because it would reflect taxes in that March 15th to April 15th range. And so things were changing in that time. And then in June, we'll have more information and more data. And the council has the ability to make changes up until the time the budget is adopted. And we will analyze that data and provide you with the best information possible to make those decisions.
Sounds good. I'm not hearing you, Chris.
I just have, am I off mute?
There you go.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, Linda, you go ahead with the audit services item.
Okay. We issued a request for proposal for auditing services because our audit contract had expired with RSM, who we used for a number of years. And we received 4 excellent responses from qualified CPA firms. We evaluated those responses based on primarily 5 categories of criteria. One is, were they qualified to perform governmental audits in Oklahoma? Did they have experience with auditing governmental entities who received recognition for excellence in reporting by the Government Finance Officers Association? Were they experienced with performing federally required single audits on grants. We had that with the Safe for Grant. And we also looked at whether they offered continuing education, particularly governmental accounting, to both their staff and to their clients. And, you know, if they were committed to providing qualified and experienced governmental auditing staff. So we looked at those proposals. The audit committee met today. We discussed the qualifications of each of their proposers, and the audit committee did vote to recommend BT and Company to the council for the next audit contract, and we're prepared to bring forth a recommendation at next week's council meeting unless there's any concerns tonight from you councilors.
And I'm sure it goes without saying that we've vetted them and that they've done other cities around, and you've contacted those cities.
Yes, they have experience both in Oklahoma and in Kansas. I happen to be from Kansas, so when they give a list of references there, I recognize them, which is helpful. But they are actually based out of Topeka. Our former auditors, RSM, are based out of Oklahoma City, so we are used to having auditors that have to drive in for our audit. Anymore with technology such that as it is, and each of you are certainly getting to test that now, we have significant abilities to download data to a secure site for them to have access to it, and they can do a lot of the detailed work remotely, but they certainly will be on site for a period of time to do work on site, but they aren't anymore with today's technology required to be on site for the entire audit.
Linda, can you tell me an example of a city in Oklahoma that they've done audit for?
Oh my gosh, you would ask me that, and now I've drawn a total blank. I can certainly send you that.
Comparable to the size of Owasso, I guess, is what I'm really...
Yes. I can't remember, I hesitate to say, I can't remember if it was Stillwater or Norman, or it was a city you would certainly recognize enough of a decent size. So I will be happy to send you that list.
Thank you.
It's apparent that those four that submitted, they all qualified in the areas that you were talking about. But what is it? Can you kind of characterize for me what the audit committee felt like that stuck out for BT and Company?
Well, one of the things that was particularly appealing was the experience of the staff that would be on site. They have experienced staff at all levels. You normally have several that work on an engagement, and it's nice when they all have experience with governmental, not just one that has to kind of train the others. So that was one of their strengths, was having multiple. They had 4 staff members with extensive governmental experience. They were excellent at providing us data on what kind of training they had. So we could look through and say, yes, they've had the new GASB standard on leases. They've had the new GASB standard on this. They've had the annual GAAP governmental accounting update. You know, we could see very specifically the training that their staff had received, and then we could see a list of clients of other municipalities that staff has worked on. And we looked at, did they have multiple clients with comprehensive annual financial reports that received awards? And there's very specific criteria that you have to meet to do that. And so it's comforting when you have a list of multiple people that have demonstrated that ability. It's always a little bit of a concern if you have an auditor and one person has that experience but nobody else, or they have limited experience, because you can have turnover, and then you can go with having one person that has experience to none. And so we liked the depth of this particular firm and their level of experience.
Okay, now, it sounds like it. Do we anticipate having to pay much more for their services over what we have been paying?
Their quote was very comparable to what we've been paying, and that was good to see.
Good.
RSM also quoted, and they quoted a much higher rate than we've been paying. So if we had chosen to stay with them, we would have paid significantly more.
All right, well, sounds like y'all did your homework. Good job.
Thank you.
Anyone else have questions or comments? Okay, thank you, Linda. We'll move on to item number 5, discussion relating to city manager items. Mr. Lear?
Thank you, Mayor. The first item, I want to point out we're in the midst of National Telecommunicators Week that runs from April 12th through April 18th. I want to take a moment to recognize our longtime civilian administrator of our police communications, our dispatchers, our telecommunicators. But that administrator is Bill Allen. He is retiring in June after 30-plus years of service. Bill is the type of team member and employee that certainly you hate to lose. But to his credit, he not only has done an outstanding job over the years in developing training and objective benchmarks for high performance levels for our telecommunicators, our dispatchers, but he's also done a good job of training supervisors. And a few years ago, he promoted shift supervisors. So in Bill's very soon absence, he had a very difficult decision to make between his 2 shift supervisors, Ms. Brooke Watson and Ms. Jessica Fletcher. Brooke Watson will be the new civilian administrator. She will do an outstanding job. We have a great deal of confidence in both of them. But I can't say enough about Bill Allen. It's rare that you have an employee, a team member who has put so much into an operation. I have the greatest amount of confidence in our dispatchers, as I do several other departments, but no department do I have any more respect for than our dispatchers. They're very much on the front line of all the work that our first responders do. They are first responders in the sense that they are the first point of contact for anyone in distress, whether it be a fire, emergency medical situation, or a law enforcement or police situation. They have a unique skill set. They have to be very technology oriented. They have to process a great deal of information very quickly through a number of different media. And they also have to have empathy and almost just an ability to counsel, to work with, to communicate to the people on the other end of the phone who are experiencing, maybe the greatest crisis of their lives. So a lot of stress in this position. I can't say enough about our team of dispatchers. I think they're outstanding. They've had outstanding leadership for many years and will continue to have outstanding leadership. Over the years, we get a number of letters and cards that are directed to our dispatchers and the wonderful job that they've done. Certainly to the public, please, you might not know a dispatcher, but it's a good week to thank a dispatcher and respect them for their great service. So congratulations to our dispatchers, or maybe not congratulations, but commendations for the great job that they do day in, day out, 24 hours a day. Moving on, our monthly sales tax report. We're going to invite our Finance Director, Linda Jones, back to the table with the sales tax report.
Well, I'm very pleased to share that we exceeded our budget this month in sales tax. I will remind those listening that we are not yet seeing the impact of the coronavirus and on our businesses. So the upside is that if you look at where we are compared to budget year to date, with use tax and sales tax, we're $1.3 million above budget. So we're positioned very well to absorb the decline that we anticipate over the next at least 2 months. And so it looks as good as we could hope for at this point in time. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
It's good news.
Yeah, especially this, during this time, we can use all the extra that we can get right now. How much is in the fund that we have right now? Over and above what the budget is?
Combined sales and use tax, it's 1.3 million. On your report, you can see the budget to actual comparison on sales tax. On the use tax, we normally don't list the budget, but when you do look at, we have it on our records, it's just not in your official report, and when you look at them in totality, it's 1.3 million. They had a budget.
Thank you.
If there are no other questions, just one other item. Council, you should have received an email within the last week or so outlining the procedure for the annual city manager and city attorney evaluations. As you're aware, there are 2 employees that are under contract. They're staggered 2-year contracts. This is the year that you, I believe, will ratify the second year, or at least we hope you'll ratify the second year of the city manager contract, and then begin a new 2-year city attorney contract. There's an annual evaluation process. You should have received a link to the evaluation surveys. And with that, I will conclude my report.
Thank you, Warren. On to item number 6, city council or trustee comments.
I felt like I need to just say once again, with this effort that we're having to go through to do teleconferencing for the meetings, I really appreciate all the efforts gone in by staff to make this work. I know it hasn't been perfect, but it certainly is a vital part of us being able to maintain and continue to do business. So I appreciate all those efforts that the staff has taken to make this work. And going back to what you said, Warren, on Bill Allen, I was impressed by his efforts working with Chief Chambliss on the alarms, when we had to come up with new ordinance for the alarms, as well as I know that the chief has commented on his efforts as well whenever they were revamping the police department headquarters, and his efforts for that. So congratulations to Bill for a job well done on all those things, and I wish him well in retirement.
As you can hear in the background, my neighbor's dog reminded me that it's Dr. Kelly's birthday, and that he wanted me to make sure that we wish Dr. Kelly a happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Hey, I want to give a shout out to our fire department. At times like these, we're focused on COVID, and we had an unfortunate incident with a neighbor that had a fire, and as you guys know, I've been through that as well, and just can't give high enough praise to our fire department. And unfortunately, got to talk to that individual today after their incident, and they reflected the same thing. Just a completely professional job and compassionate at the same time. So it's, at a time where seems like all we're thinking about is COVID, I think we oftentimes forget there's still all the other same bad stuff that happens is still going on. Our police department, our fire department have to deal with all the normal day in and day out types of things, and dealing with COVID on top of that. So I want to give a shout out to that entire group. They're doing a great job, and hang in there. Hopefully we'll get through this soon.
Amen.
Any other council comments? Okay. Well, with that, I'll call for an adjournment, and I guess in this format, it's a little bit different when we're there present. We all just kind of scoot out, but I'll call for a vote on this adjournment since we're in this new format. So all in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you for everyone tuning in. We'll be back here 6:30 next Tuesday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good job.